Greetings and a warm welcome to episode 20 of the Australia-China Media Watch podcast. In this episode, we'll be looking at articles published from Monday the 28th of March, running through to Sunday the 3rd of April 2022. During the course of the week, there were 24 mentions of Australia in the Global Times, and this is contrasted to the 10 articles from Sky News Australia relating to China. Let's take a closer look at the headlines. Published on the 28th of March in the Global Times comes this headline, which is directed towards Australia, and it reads, "Bully Australia coerces Pacific Island countries and smears China's role in the region," published in the top news section of the Global Times. The next headline reads, "West sees limit of ideological exploitation amid Ukraine crisis," found in the Viewpoint section. The third article for the week was published in the in-depth section of the Global Times, with the headline reading, "Brewing Water Conflict," relating to the Australia-Mekong Partnership for Environmental Resources and Energy Systems. Following on from that, also published on the 28th of March, originally by Xinhua and found in the Asia-Pacific section. This headline reads, "Seniors more likely to see silver linings, shows Australian research." The next article reads, "Hegemonic and colonist mentality behind Australia's threats to invade Solomon Islands," published on March the 28th and found in the Observer section. The next headline reads, "China lodges representations with Australia over repatriation of Chinese students," published March 29th and found in the Society section. The next article has the headline reading, "Australia blow for West Indies semi, England, South Africa square up again," found in the miscellaneous section. The next headline reads, "Heavy rains trigger evacuations," published on March 29th. Published on March 30th, "Thousands farewell cricket legend warn." Following on from that, published on March the 30th, yet another article targeting Australia, and more specifically, a national representation of a political nature, is this headline, "Australia needs realistic perspective on regional security and not fretting about China." Published on March the 30th in the miscellaneous section, "Healy hits century as Australia power into Women's World Cup," published on March the 30th, "Hypocritical Aussie concern." Following on from that, published on March the 30th in the Asia-Pacific section, "Australia PM seeks to sell voters on budget breaks," published on the 31st of March, relating to the Solomon Islands. This headline reads, "China Solomon Islands Inc. Security Cooperation deriving from need to quell Honiara riots in past year." This is found in the Diplomacy section of the Global Times. Published on the 31st of March in the Economy section, "Heliogen lines up Woodside for Australian concentrated solar power push." The next headline reads, "GT Voice, Canberra's new plan against Chinese firms leasing of Darwin Port self-destructive." Also published on the 31st of March, "Resignation of 2 British judges won't affect Hong Kong's judicial independence." The next headline reads, Indigenous Aussie suicide, incarceration rates rise. Also published on the 31st of March, Hong Kong government refutes inaccurate statements on the independence and impartiality of judges after 2 UK magistrates resign. The next headline reads, Australia continues to boost defence budget amid naive ambition of weaponizing self for US strategy. Published on the 1st of April, Beware, Devil may break out of US biolabs. Also published on the 1st of April, this headline reads, Ukraine crisis, a catalyst for the burial of American hegemony. The following headline, Australia plays victim of economic coercion to attack China, obstructs cooperation, according to the Chinese FM, Foreign Minister. And the final article for the week, published on the 2nd of April and found in the top news section, speculation over a Chinese military base in the Solomon Islands is fake news with a political agenda. And that concludes our quick scan of the 24 headlines from the Global Times for the week. Let's now head over to Sky News Australia and their national representations of China. The first article of the week is entitled Flight Data Recorder Found in China Eastern Airlines Flight Wreckage as Families Mourn Death of All 132 Passengers on Board. This was published on March the 28th. Following on from that, we have Solomon Islands Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare insulted by backlash amid leaked security negotiations with China, published on March the 29th. The next headline reads, Ready for signing, Solomon Islands PM ready to go ahead with China deal, published March 29th. Also relating to the Solomon Islands, this next headline, published on March 29th, reads, Government very concerned about reports of China extending influence in Solomon Islands. Published on March the 31st, this next headline reads, all but certain Cheng Lei's fate in China has been decided, relating to Australian journalist Cheng Lei, who is currently on trial in China. This next headline reads, Australia's ambassador to China barred from entering high-profile trial of imprisoned journalist Cheng Lei, published on the 31st of March. Also published on the 31st of March, this headline reads, particularly worrying, minimal detail known about Cheng Lei's charges in China. So we're beginning to see a pattern of synchronicity, co-occurring headlines from the Sky News Australia relating to this single event. We move along to the next headline, and this relates to the new Darwin port, published 31st of March. The headline reads, Birmingham confirms investment in a new Darwin port to counter Chinese-owned facilities, says it may have defense benefits. Also on the topic of the Solomon Islands, this next headline reads, AFP sound alarm about Solomon Islands China deal, published March the 31st. Published on the 1st of April, and beginning to see a pattern of diachronicity, repetition over time. And Australia must be on alert to China Solomon's Island deal, published on the 1st of April. And the final article for the week relating to China from Sky News Australia is this one, with the headline, China Still Pursuing COVID-19 Elimination Fantasy, published April the 3rd, 2022 at 11:22 a.m. And that concludes our quick scan of the headlines of the week, starting from 28th of March, Monday to Sunday, the 3rd of April, with 11 mentions of Australia in Sky News Australia. 11 mentions of China in Sky News Australia, contrasted with the 24 mentions of Australia in the Global Times.